You're live, Commissioner.
Good morning. You're tuning into the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Thursday, March 10th, 2022. It is 10:05 a.m. This is a virtual meeting. For public attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel or join by calling 360-252-9020, pin number 1234. I'm Carolina Mejia, Chair of the Board. I'm joined by Vice Chair Ty Menser, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards, County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and Director of Community and Public of CPED, Joshua Cummings, as well as other staff members. The topic we will be discussing today, it's a continuation of the 2022-2023 preliminary docket public comment and proposals follow-up. And it is set for 2 hours. So I am not sure, County Manager, do you want to?
Yeah, just an introduction for the benefit of the public. This is a continuation of the March 3rd, 2022 briefing related to the, as you stated, the 2022-2023 preliminary dockets. At that meeting, you made some preliminary decisions as to what you would like to include in terms of continuing the docket. Put one on the preliminary docket and start assessing any new requests, which you already made some decisions. I am not going to walk you through that. I'll encourage the public to see the live stream on March 3rd. It was a very robust conversation among the commissioners. So at this point, we'll continue on that process. As a reminder, we're looking for thumbs up to add it to the docket. Thumbs sideways is to include it on the preliminary docket, and thumbs down will be not for consideration. So eliminated from any of the dockets. With that in mind, Josh.
Thank you, County Manager. Yes, as the County Manager relayed, this is a continuation. And I think we spent the last 2 hours laying a really good foundational groundwork on that, the decision-making space for this meeting, which is thumbs up for official docket, sideways for preliminary docket, keep it on the preliminary docket, or thumbs down for take it off the preliminary docket completely. And as we talked about last time, this isn't about the merits of what the applicant potentially wants to do. This is whether or not the board wants us to explore the request of the applicant. And so in the issue, in the honor of time for the applicants to make sure that they have their project heard or their request heard, I want to make sure that we keep that decision-making process relatively narrow. We will come back to the board once you decide on up, sideways, or down on each one of these with a prioritization conversation to make sure that we know which ones we should be facilitating and in which order. Anything more to add as a setup, Chris or Maya? Or any questions from the board?
I do.
I guess Commissioner Menser's hand.
Commissioner Menser, go ahead.
So I'm just trying to orient myself. I remember specifically leaving off on the second page of the comprehensive docket with the Black Lake Quarry item, but looking at the first page, the countywide study of industrial lands, did we address that or did we leave it? I know at first we were going to do all the old stuff and then go back to the new stuff, but I remember there was a vote on POG, so I know we did at least one new thing.
Oh, maybe I can refresh the vote on that.
Yeah, I mean, because I just as a kind of a foundational point, it seemed like with a lot of these proposals, there were two overarching things. One was, besides the merits or potential value of any of these projects, one was staffing constraint, and the other was, should we have this predicate study of industrial lands as the Planning Commission recommended? And those two things seem like they need to be in mind as we go through the individuals.
Right. So maybe I can refresh the commissioners on the vote that you took.
Perfect.
So you're going to go on the first page that you have is the county-initiated amendments. So beginning with the CPA 16, which is the community-driven review of agricultural policies and programs, it was a unanimous vote to keep it on the docket. On the CPA 1, is the joint plans update. It was a unanimous decision to keep it on the docket. The CPA 4, the capital improvement plan, it was a unanimous decision to keep it on the docket. The CPA 6, the Nisqually sub-area plan, unanimously, the board agreed to keep it on the docket. The CPA 7A, the Grand Mount Survey Plan, also the board unanimously decided to keep it on the docket. Next is the new proposals, is the countywide study of industrial lands. Also unanimously, the board agreed to add it to the docket in this case. Then we move to the first page of the citizen-initiated amendments. The CPA 19, that is the Upcastle LLC, the site-specific map land use plan for a rezoning amendment. It was a 2-to-1 to keep it on the preliminary docket. Commissioner Edwards voted to include it on the docket. Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Menser voted to keep it on the preliminary docket.
Which one was that again?
That's the CPA 19.
Okay.
Moving on to the CPA 20, another citizens initiative amendment. That is the Beaver Creek site specific. It was a unanimous decision by the board to keep it on the docket. And then we move into the new proposals. And that is the POG, site-specific land use plan and rezoning amendment. And Commissioner Mejia and Commissioner Edwards voted to add it to the docket. Commissioner Menser voted to keep it on the preliminary docket. So 2-to-1 decision to add it to the docket. And then we stop there. And then we're going to start on the Black Lake Quarry in the conversation.
Okay. I just want to say, because I had some follow-up with staff between the two meetings, and the countywide industrial land study, it doesn't affect my vote to want to keep it on the docket, but I kind of had a slight different misunderstanding about the scope of it based on my discussion with staff. I thought it was limited to siting of warehouse projects, and I understand it's really broader than, it's broader than that. It can be all industrial uses in different parts of the county. I also, in the Economic Development Council, I believe, weighed in with a letter that said something about feeling like there was a predetermined, being concerned about this item because they thought there might be some predetermined result that was trying to be achieved. And I kind of wanted to address that up front because the Thurston Regional Planning Council, and this is again based on my follow-up with staff this week, Thurston Regional Planning Council did a study that was, as I understood, and Chris can just, if I get anything wrong here, please correct me, but what I understood you to say was that the TRPC study on this very topic wasn't quite as thorough and was focused on the UGAs. And I asked staff, well, what is this gonna do that one's not already done? And it's gonna go deeper and take in a lot more things into consideration, and it's gonna look at the whole county, not just UGAs. And I just wanted to highlight that for my seatmates because, and it's kind of a response to the EDC, because if we just relied on the TRPC, it's saying there's enough industrial land, we shouldn't be changing any zoning. So to me, for the board to commit to this study is an effort to increase flexibility and potentially make arguments that aren't there on the basis of the TRPC work, that maybe there are justifications for these projects. So I want to say that because we voted to add this, and it felt like to me like the EDC was interpreting this as sort of trying to limit projects, and maybe that's the result, but not necessarily. It may be that it adds flexibility that the TRPC study doesn't suggest that there should be. So I see this as a very useful tool, understanding what the scope actually is. And I also wanted to clarify that scope for my seatmates because there's this ongoing debate from the community about, well, should this project wait until we finish that study? If we don't actually understand the scope of the study, it's hard to factor that into your decision on a particular specific project. So that's why I wanted to say all that up front.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner. And I believe the letter you talk about is the Thurston County Chamber.
Okay, sorry, Chamber.
Yeah, is and attached in your packet today is that letter dated March 7, 2022, just for.
I thought, okay, Chamber, yeah. There was some input from Michael K, but it was I think on a different one. Okay.
Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Following up on that, I think the issue is that I get a sense we all want to have a review and see where these properties that are applicable to certain development and maybe outlets is part of that. But, and I think we ought to do that, but I don't think that we ought to delay every potential project that gets presented to the county as a economic driver, job creator, or whatever, and say, well, we're not gonna accept anything until we get this done. And this might not get done for 2 or 3 years, and that just, to me, that is inhibiting economic development and proper usage of some of the properties without having the ability to overcome the delay process that is inherently built into the system. So I want to make sure that we don't tie our own hands to move forward with good projects, that's all. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I see Josh did have his hand up, but I think Ty did too.
Yeah, Commissioner Menser and then Josh.
So I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Edwards, but I think that, so my position is gonna be that on the Grand Mound sub-area that has, as I understood it from staff, 7 or 8 projects bound into that, that should not be constrained by this study because we've already identified Grand Mound as a specific area where we are promoting industrial uses and urban density and all of that. And that will that type of effort will more than take up the staff resources that we have and not hold up economic development and good projects. I think the study is relevant to projects that are proposed in more, disparate areas, not a place like Grand Mound where we've identified this as an appropriate location. We shouldn't have to think too hard about that because that's already been decided by boards way before me. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at on that. I think we can focus on the Grand Mound stuff because there's a backlog there and with projects tied up into the sub-area plan. And then we can potentially have this study help us guide us on these other projects that are newer, not in an area that's been pre-identified as appropriate for industrial use. And that will dovetail with the staffing limitations that we have anyway, which would be a problem. So that's kind of how I'm seeing my answer to your concern.
Do we want to hear from me or Josh first?
We're going to hear from Josh and then from you, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, so I'm going to try and go into my Wayback Machine because I believe that there was a 4th option that Commissioner Mincer provided at the last briefing, and maybe Maya or Chris can jump in here, and Commissioner Mincer too, if I'm getting the 4th option wrong. It was add the countywide study of industrial lands. That's where we got the 3-0 vote to the docket, but don't hold up the site-specific projects that are asking for application at this time. I think that was where we landed last time. Maya, is that where we were?
Yeah, and Commissioner Mencer specifically said we can consider each of these individual requests piece by piece as opposed to either a blanket hold or a blanket move forward. And I believe that's the approach that we started taking at the last work session because we considered Upcastle and Beaver Creek both individually. And holding really means keeping on the preliminary. So it's that sideways thumb. Of course, there are other reasons the board might choose to keep a docket item on the preliminary docket aside from this industrial lands analysis. But we were considering each of these applications individually.
Does that help, commissioners?
I mean, just to clarify, Maya said it exactly correctly from terms of what I was proposing. I was a little confused, and that's why I had a meeting with them about the black. I said that because I knew that there were Grand Mound connected projects that I did not want to hold up for this study, but I didn't realize that they were folded into the Grand Mound sub-area plan, and that, for example, Black Lake Quarry, I didn't realize they had a second proposal that had nothing to do with Grand Mound. So anyway, I'm still fine with going case by case. rather than blanket. So Maya, I think, put it correctly in terms of what I was proposing.
Good job, Maya.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, going case by case, that makes sense to me as well. But make sure, so we've got, I don't know, 3 other issues to address here on the next page. But, say, before November of this year, when we receive applications about projects, I don't want to limit someone that comes in with a very good application and could really do something for us and tie that up on the countywide industrial lands review. I want to do that review, but I'm just going to use an example. We had I don't know, electric car outfit. What was the outfit that wanted to build a tunnel and whatever, you know? What was that all about?
The research and development proposal, the ones we were looking at?
Yes.
Yeah, it was in South County, yeah.
And so we had a very robust application, I guess is the best way that I could put it, that would have been a real economic driver for our community. And most of it was going to be underground, is the way I remember. And if we had something in place like this study going on, and we couldn't even consider something like that was brought forward, I think it takes us out of the running of being a potential location for some folks in different types of industry. And I just use that as one example that would have impeded our ability to review that and be able to move ahead. I want to go ahead with that study because I want to know where those good properties are, which ones are most likely. But I don't want to tie our hands so that we can't tell a potential group that comes forward and says, hey, we want to put $1 billion into your community and, you know, create 200 good living wage jobs or whatever the project is. And say, well, we can't do that until we get done with this industrial lands review. That is my concern.
Understood, Commissioner, and we will always bring those items back to the board, and it's up to the board's purview on how you'd like to proceed. So what I'm hearing, though, currently is site-specific. Let's continue to review. Looks like the county manager has a question.
Go ahead, County Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Maya's and Josh's perspective because that's what I recall on the conversation related to the countywide study industrial lands. And it was interesting because I did receive a couple of phone calls asking the questions if the board has put a moratorium in any of the applications. The moratorium word was never discussed with the board. I think the board was considering going with the countywide study of industrial lands. And the board has already assessing individual requests as we move along. So, and the reason that I'm stating this, I just want to make sure for the public's benefit, the board never consider putting a moratorium in any of the applications. So, and that's really what my message is to the public is to ensure a moratorium never was discussed in the conversation last week. And I don't believe a moratorium is part of your decision-making process at this point. I just want to clarify that for the public.
The closest thing to that would be a blanket hold, which we said, no, we're not doing.
Exactly. So I just want to clarify that because I have received that perspective, and in a way, that's the chamber's letter kind of alluded to the fact that perhaps you have discussed that, which you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
Well, they actually discussed that with
Yeah.
me in a
Yeah.
conversation
So,
as well.
Thank you for allowing me to clarify that.
Okay. I think we're all on the sheet of music.
Okay, so with that, do we want to discuss, we left off on the Black Lake Quarry site-specific land use and rezoning amendment.
Yep, that was next. Go ahead. Naya?
Great, thank you, Commissioners. Maya Teeple, Senior Planner with Community Planning. Jumping right into the Black Lake Quarry proposal. This is a site-specific land use and zoning amendment. It's approximately half a mile south of the Tumwater urban growth area. And this request is to change from their current zoning of rural 1 to 20 to rural resource industrial. Rural 1 to 20 is zoned and was developed in 2007 as a zoning district to provide safety and minimize development in environmental areas and areas that might be sensitive, like the Black River Corridor and the Nisqually Bluff. And the request to rural resource industrial would allow a variety of commercial and industrial uses, as well as some more intensive industrial uses if it meets a specific locational criteria. And they're also requesting a code change with this proposal. So summarizing the written comment, we received 15 comments on this proposal. 2 were in support of the application, 1 being from the applicant and the other from a citizen. And just noting that this proposal would have benefits to the region, including jobs, alleviating conversion pressures to industrial uses elsewhere in the county, and generally supportive of the countywide industrial study, provided it is reviewed with an EIS. And then 13 comments were received against this proposal. Most of those recommend delaying it or holding it until the countywide industrial study is complete, for the reason that this proposal does not support agriculture. There were a few comments that recommend that the reclaimed mine be returned to woodland or farm, because that's consistent with the surrounding zoning. And then another comment that was against this proposal was just generally against all site-specific rezones. So that is my summary of public comment. We estimate this would be a high staff resource need and a high level of public interest, just based on similar types of proposals that we've had come through recently.
Questions, comments, Commissioners? Commissioner Edwards?
I think that a half mile outside of the UGA of Tumwater is a reasonable distance to start recognizing growth. And it's gonna happen. And why not get ahead of it, not necessarily wait for this site-specific area, but recognizing that properties are being, eligible properties are harder and harder to find, so that we can provide, whether it's jobs, housing, or whatever it's gonna be. And I really think that a half mile south of the UGA really makes sense, because that UGA is gonna have to be expanded at some point in the future. And that's right close versus if it was 5 miles away, for an example. So that's why I'd like to move ahead with this. And as far as it being intensive, I'd like to see the ability to have some of this, the review stuff contracted out, whether it's a environmental study or whatever some of the requirements are. I think we can contract some of that out. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Commissioner Menser?
Well, I was initially confused because I thought this was related to the Black Lake Quarry project near Grand Mound, which I did not want to see that delayed. So that's why I followed up with staff this last week, and they gave me a lot of detail that I didn't quite understand at the last meeting. So I appreciate that. I think this one does make sense to keep, to hold for the study that we're talking about. You know, we've got the Beaver Creek proposal, which is already on the docket, which is a high staff resource one. We didn't even get started on that last year. I don't think we have the staffing to get to this project anyway, and based on its location right on the Black River and the sensitivity potentially there, I'd like to know a little bit more about the appropriateness of industrial use in that location. So I'm gonna support its remaining on preliminary docket, until we can get our industrial land study done, and then we can dive into it. Like I say, I don't think it would happen before then anyway, frankly, based on what we've got in front of it in line, but, that's where I'm at.
Chair?
Can I say something first?
Yeah, jump in there. You just, wait, I want you to know when I say chairs, because you're not looking my direction. So I see you studying your material and stuff. And so these Zoom things kind of make it like we're not as cordial as we should be, but I want to make sure that's not the perceived case here.
No, sir, I see you. My question is, with this specific area, is it, and for some reason with this, I thought it was in the Tumwater UGA, but I might be confusing it with another project. Is that the case?
Yes, there is another project that's the next one we'll talk about that is directly adjacent to the Tumwater UGA.
Okay, and then this one's the mine that they're trying, okay. I'm sorry, I just had to get all my ducks in a row with, they all start blending in a little bit. So with this one, I mean, would this one fit in with the Grand Mountain study that we're doing, or no? Just because it's a different application.
It's outside of the boundary of the Grand Mountain area. It's
Pretty
way
far
But
north
they're-
of Grand Mountain.
It's quite a
But
bit
they're-
north.
But they're also a party to, in that application, are they not?
Yes, there are two separate applications. One Black Lake Quarry application is already folded into the Grand Mountain project. That's an entirely separate series of parcels. This is a additional request by the same party. It's very far from the Grand Mountain urban growth area. It's nowhere near it.
Okay.
And Commissioner, it might be helpful on the one pagers that we have. It's page 323 of 378. We have that.
Yes, I was looking at it. Yeah.
It's got that little teeny box that shows where the
map.
area is.
Okay. Yeah, with this one, my thoughts are, it would be helpful to have the industrial study done first. I don't want to completely remove it off. I think it would be beneficial to keep it onto the preliminary docket for now. And see how the industrial study works out. Do we have any? Yeah, so I'll have my vote will be to keep it on the preliminary docket for now.
Commissioner Edwards got a follow.
Until we get at least, I mean, the fact that, yeah, we didn't even start on the Beaver Creek this last time. And then with Upcastle being on the preliminary docket, but them still missing the environmental study that they have to do, I wouldn't want to overwhelm staff. Commissioner Edwards, go ahead, sir.
I guess this is a good example of my concern about that complete review and the time it's going to take. And when it comes to that environmental review, because it's close to the river, granted, we're going to need that no matter what. Why not have the applicant pay for a study for that environmental review, and then we'd know if it's going to be detrimental or not because of the river. Otherwise, we just never know. So that's why I'd like to have it move forward, because we get some of those requirements out of the way. And I don't think our staff has to do all of them. Our staff has to oversee what's being done, but that's my position on it.
So what I'm hearing is Commissioner Edwards thumbs up on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Menser, aside thumbs, Commissioner Mejia, thank you. So this item goes into the preliminary docket on a 2-to-1. Thank you.
Great, so the next two items on this sheet, Bressi and MC Construction, the board made a decision to roll into the joint plan updates. So we will be skipping those. Those are folded into the Lacey Urban Growth Area Joint Plan Update. And then moving on to the Bar Holdings proposal, this is page 329 in your binder. This proposal is just outside of the Tumwater Urban Growth Area, and currently it's zoned rural resource residential 1 to 5. The applicant would like to change the zoning to light industrial. We received a few comments on this proposal, 18 of those against and 1 in support. The comment in support is that there is a need for retail and commercial in that area to support new residences and a growing population. And the comprehensive planning process will help to ensure that the communities are livable and have sustainable qualities for local communities. Comments against this proposal cited a number of different things. A few of those comments cite the recent buildable lands study and that there is sufficient residential, commercial, and industrial land already within the Tumwater urban growth area to support the population over the next 20 years. There are a few comments that stated that because the Thurston Habitat Conservation Plan is not adopted, it couldn't be evaluated in the buildable lands report, but ultimately when that plan is adopted, it should make existing industrial areas easier to develop in urban areas. A number of neighboring properties and citizens that live around that area said that the requested zoning is not suitable and doesn't align with the surrounding properties, which are mostly low density residential and woodland. And a number of comments also referred to a 2008 Growth Management Hearings Board ruling where a portion of the UGA was actually removed and shrunk because there was sufficient lands in the UGA existing for the next 20 years in population. Additionally, some citizens have concerns over stormwater issues, truck traffic, noise, pollution, and other things that might come with a light industrial zoning. So noting that, we did get a comment from the city. They referenced that the buildable lands report was complete last year, and also the Tumwater Joint Plan was recently complete. The board took an action on that in 2021. Both of those things would influence this application, and this application does request a UGA amendment. So it would also require an amendment to the Tumwater Joint Plan if the board wishes to pursue this.
What was Tumwater's position?
In the comment that Tumwater submitted initially, they stated that because we just updated the joint plan, they don't believe there is a need to expand to the urban growth area. I have had follow-up conversations with the city of Tumwater, and they've stated that if the board would like to pursue this application, they won't be standing in the way of it. However, everything they referenced in regards to the buildable lands study and the recent adoption of the Tumwater Joint Plan is still objectively accurate.
Their letter is on page 37, Commissioner Edwards.
When you guys keep talking about page numbers, are we talking about the binder?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sometimes I don't have the same thing. Okay, got it, perfect, thank you, Commissioner Mejia.
It's,
Did you
my
say
comment,
337?
Just page 37.
37, sir.
Okay.
You know, we just got done with the Tumwater plan. I felt like this is one of those applications that could have been rolled into it. So I feel like they missed the boat a little bit on this one, which is,
I have a comment on that.
go ahead, sir.
Okay, my position is basically the same, only I have a better argument on this one than I did on, the one that was a half mile south of Tumwater. This one is actually adjacent to the UGA from Tumwater. It's not in close proximity, it's adjacent to, is that right? All right. Right. Yeah.
That's correct.
And this is also a jobs and economic driver. And I don't see anything that's detrimental to the environment here with this particular one. And again, Tumwater is going to be annexing that at some point in time. And why don't we just move ahead rather than continue to wait for something that we have no idea how long it's gonna take for the industrial lands portion to be done. And this one is in a better, it's about as close to the situation as we could get other than being within the UGA of Tumwater. So that's why I wanna move ahead with this. I think it's jobs and it's economic development.
I wanted to see what Tumwater had to say on this project specifically because we just went through the whole process of getting everything aligned, and the fact that they don't support it, in their letter, they specifically say that, the updated joint plan found that there was sufficient residential, commercial, and industrial land in the Tumwater urban growth area to support projected growth over the next 20 years, and that an expansion of the Tumwater urban growth area was not needed to accommodate projected residential, commercial, and industrial growth. With that, I have a question with the light industrial and what it accommodates.
Yeah, so the light industrial zoning, it's not purely industrial uses. That zone does also accommodate a number of commercial uses. It also can accommodate schools, post offices, recreation facilities, a variety of types of professional and personal services like plumbing, electricians. So it's not purely industrial. There are a number of different types of commercial uses that also fall within the light industrial zone. And it can also accommodate things like automobile sales and dealerships, automobile services, nurseries, daycare facilities, family and adult homes, residential care facilities. So there's a wide range of uses that fall within the light industrial zoning district. And the applicant has indicated that they may be leaning more towards commercial, but at this time we can't predict what the ultimate use would be. It would just fall within that light industrial zoning district.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
And then, yes, sir. No, I was just going to point out like one last sentence from the letter that Tumwater submitted, and it said the applicant did not discuss their application with the city staff before submitting their request to the county to expand the city's urban growth area.
Yes, I will add, Commissioner Mejia, the city did correct that. They did speak with the applicant prior, yes.
Okay, so that's good to know. And did they say what they told the applicant when they were in touch?
I'm not sure what the conversations were between the city and the applicant. We do typically tell applicants to have these discussions with the city prior to applying to the county for rezone requests.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
Well, it's my understanding that that discussion, they weren't prepared to support it and move forward with it for the reasons stated, but they weren't against it because they realized that's gonna be part of the growth of their community. And so what, we're gonna have 1 in 5 housing, which kind of restricts the ability for Tumwater to expand. I mean, the more housing that gets built, the less likelihood that we can have economic development on that property. And this is in close proximity. I mean, this is as close as you can get to the UGA, and it just makes sense to move forward on this, so. I guess no point in saying anymore at this point, but it's a heck of a good economic development move.
Commissioner Menzer?
So on a UGA expansion, my understanding from discussing similar proposals in Grand Mound are that there are very strict criteria in order to be able to accomplish a UGA expansion. And I'm wondering if we think that can even be achieved. I know there's probably, I think I've asked this before and been told, well, that's what we would explore, you know, if you put on the docket. That's one question. Then a related question is, can we, even if they could meet the criteria, you know, whatever that is, are we allowed to do that unilaterally if Tumwater didn't want? I mean, can we just make Tumwater, do they have no say in us expanding their UGA if they don't think it should be expanded? Or is that some kind of collaboration that they would be able to veto? That seems weird to me that we could just unilaterally expand it without their okay, given that it's their UGA that ultimately they would be looked to annex and provide services to.
Right, so as Commissioner Menzer stated, there are strict criteria that need to be met in order to expand urban growth area boundaries. Most of that criteria is that the county must show that there is a need for more UGA area or a certain type of land use to support the growing population over the next 20 years, or there is an overwhelming public interest in expansion of that urban growth area. And there is a separate subcommittee through TRPC, Thurston Regional Planning Council, that reviews that specifically in terms of the county expanding the urban growth area and what the process looks like for that. So for an urban growth area expansion, it does require a change to the joint plan. And our joint plans are reviewed jointly by both the Thurston County Planning Commission and the City Planning Commission. Then the City Council reviews it and makes a recommendation. The UGM subcommittee is kind of in between that process. They will also produce a recommendation, and then the Board of County Commissioners has the final say. So it is a county vote. That's because the county has jurisdiction over the urban growth areas. We do the permitting in those areas. But ultimately, there are a number of recommendations that are produced through the process when reviewing these areas.
So the city would have their say, although ultimately we could overrule them if we thought it was the right thing to do.
That's correct.
Okay, and then, okay, those are my questions. So it looks like Commissioner Edwards was waving his hand.
Yeah. Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
One of the things that's gonna take place here, regardless of what we do, this is gonna happen at some point, I suppose. Because I've got kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. Yeah, I don't know where all of you are at, but we're all contributing to the problem. And population is going to expand. And what's gonna happen here, if we develop this in Thurston County, then it's gonna be a heck of a tax base for Thurston County to benefit from. And the city of Tumwater is gonna want that tax base as soon as they can get it. So we're gonna get the work done. We're gonna have a good tax base for a period of time. and then it's gonna get annexed. It's inevitable to happen at some point. Why shouldn't we have a good economic, tax base in the meantime? Rather than just let it sit there and be kind of a half-baked tax base. I mean, I'm not saying we aren't getting taxes off of it now, but we could create a lot of jobs and have a good tax base from this small development. And I would just use what went on in Lacey years and years ago when the county owned the Hawks Prairie area and all that area out there. And it's all part of the growth. It's coming. Why not be involved in it, participate in it? Again, that comes back to where if the applicant needs to do an environmental impact study, okay, have them pay for it. Don't have our staff do it. We can't tie our staff up on everything, but our staff can oversee that and make sure it's done right. So charge some of this stuff off to the developer.
I have another question, and that question's in relation to a lot of the comments that I saw. How would this be connected to the industrial study? Because it doesn't seem, for me, there's the light industrial and then kind of the rest where it's the heavy industrial, I guess. They're different, but not sure if the industrial study would also cover light industrial zoning.
Yeah, so the industrial land use study would cover the light industrial. It would cover a gamut of industrial and commercial, because heavy commercial can fall into that light industrial, depending on how you define things. So it would be encompassed within that, depending on the scope that the board provides at the time we come back with all of this.
All right, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
This is an example of how delay happens in our bureaucratic system. And we have no way of controlling that at this point in time.
So may I ask the board how they'd like to proceed with this? Commissioner Edwards,
No, I want it to move ahead,
thumbs up.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Messer?
For me, this has nothing to do with the industrial study. City of Tumwater opposes it, which weighs on me, but really, for me, this is just about staffing priorities. I want to get the Grand Mountain sub-area, all those projects backlog done. I want the Lacey Joint Plan done. I want the Nisqually sub-area plan. I want the ag review. I got a lot of things I want staff to do, and so just from a staffing perspective, I'm on preliminary docket on this.
Madam Chair?
Preliminary docket as well. For me, it's a good project and I'm definitely interested in it, but if the industrial study is going to cover this as well, it's something that I would like to see. And maybe keep working with the city of Tumwater to see if this is something that, you know, they would be interested in. And I've talked to some council members about it and they have seemed interested. So I think holding off for this year and then seeing how the industrial study comes back and seeing the results for that, especially because there are so many other items that we have on, I think would be wise for this year. Commissioner Edwards, go ahead.
I just want to clarify something. I
Yep.
didn't get from any of the information that we've talked about this morning that the city of Tumwater was opposed to it.
I have a letter that says the city of Tumwater does not support including the proposed amendment for further consideration. They want us to just remove it. They don't just want us to hold it. They say they don't want us to pursue this at all.
I get
That's what I read.
okay, I get they're not in favor of moving ahead with it, but I didn't get.
But also, based on a follow-up conversation with City of Tumwater said if the board decides to move forward on this, they will not stand in the way.
Yeah,
Of the
Right.
process.
so they're not
Whether-
promoting or opposing.
But that doesn't mean that we'll have if the board considers this, is just to allow the process to continue, right? That's what I mean.
Maya said they didn't want to retract the letter, even though they let us know they would cooperate. Right? That's what you told me in our briefing.
Yeah, that's correct. And part of that is just because once it's submitted, it's on the public record. So,
Thank you, Commissioners. What I have is to keep this item of the preliminary docket, and Commissioner Edwards voted to include it in the docket. Thank you. Next, Maya.
great. So the next item is the Scott proposal. This proposal is about, I believe it's 80-ish acres. I might be getting that number wrong, but their request is to rezone and change the land use from their current zoning of rural 1 to 20 to rural residential resource 1 to 5. And we received 8 comments on this proposal. All of those comments were against the proposal, recommend delaying it until after the agricultural study is complete, or potentially deleting it outright for the reasons that the property is currently a wooded property and that it's near to farmland that has recently been farmed or been farmed within years past. There were also a couple comments noting that the project would need environmental review, which is something that all of our comprehensive plan amendments require anyways. And some comments challenging the assumption about affordable housing just by changing the zoning from 1 to 5 to 1 to 5. So all of the comments we received on this proposal were kind of generic in nature. They were rolled into this bigger concern about prioritizing the agricultural study.
Thank you. Okay, questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
Keep it on the preliminary.
I'm with Commissioner Edwards.
I am as well.
Thank you. So we'll keep it on a preliminary docket, and then you can let's vote. Thank you. So just to confirm, the last page before we move it into the development code docket, the Black Clay Quarry, that's a new request by citizen 2-1 to keep it on the preliminary docket. Commissioner Edwards voted to include it on the docket. The next, the Bresci and the MC constructions are rolled back into the listed joint plan. The next, the Bark Holdings, keep it on the preliminary docket on a 2-1. Commissioner Edwards voted to include it in the docket. And the Scott proposal on a 3-0 unanimous to keep it on the preliminary docket. Thank you.
Great, so moving on to the development code docket, our second blue and green worksheet. This is page 333 in your binder. It should be under the 4th divider. So it's under the very last divider in your binder. And the first item on this worksheet is the low impact development standards proposal. We did not receive any comments on this item. This item is currently underway and under review with the board. We estimate that there's very little staff time left needed to bring this proposal to a conclusion, and we will likely be completing it in early Q2 of this year.
And the board's already set up public hearing on this. Coming up. See Commissioner answer to keep it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm recording the vote. That's what I'm
Okay, good enough.
So was that 3 thumbs up?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Great. So the next item is docket item A6. This is the Shoreline Master Program update and revisions to our county codes to ensure consistency with the Shoreline Master Program. This has been on the docket for many, many years as we have worked through the Shoreline Master Program update. We received 3 comments, all in support of this, that the update is long overdue. The update will allow the county to reflect best available science, and some comments encouraging the county to include net gain standards and protect the shoreline. Only one of those comments recommended a priority for this being high, but work continues on the Shoreline Master Program this year, and it's currently under review with the Planning Commission.
Thumbs up, everyone, or thumbs
Yeah.
sideways, or?
Right, it's just in the process, it's not there yet, right?
But it's still, you still have the option of include continue to keep it on the docket.
Or take it off
Take it off or eliminate it. That always continues to be the option for.
and then if we take it off, don't we have litigation with, I don't know, different groups or something that we're not doing what we're required to do?
Growth management. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are
Some-
the risks, obviously, but the option is there.
Okay, vote, commissioners.
Yeah, all 3-0. Yeah, thank you.
The next item is A8, which is the Habitat Conservation Plan Implementation Ordinance. This item received 13 comments, all in support, mostly referencing that the plan has a dual purpose to protect species and also habitat preservation along with farmland protection. Some comments have recommended that the county prioritize this item, and the Habitat Conservation Plan Implementation Ordinance is currently under review with the Planning Commission. We are making progress on this. So.
Thumbs up, Commissioner Mensah?
Yeah.
Commissioner Edwards? Yeah, 3-0 to keep it. Thank you.
Well, we're almost done, aren't we?
So we're
Well,
going,
if we took this off, then we start at 2013 and start again, or what?
this is just related to the implementation of the ordinance, so, yeah.
The next item is A13, which is the miscellaneous clerical errors. This is primarily a placeholder item, so we typically don't assign staff to it, but it does allow the county flexibility if we find errors in our county codes, like department names that are wrong, or structure of code that is just needs to be corrected. So it's a flexibility and a placeholder item typically. Low staff resource need, low public interest. This kind of hangs out on the docket until there's a need to do any clerical corrections. No comment received on this item as expected, and that's my comments.
Thumbs up.
It's pretty easy one to vote on, isn't it?
3. Thank you. 3-0 to keep it.
Great. So the next item is A18, which is our code amendment to update the county code for consistency with the Thurston County Voluntary Stewardship Program. And this item had 2 comments that were just generally in support of the item. They didn't specifically cite any themes related to it. The staff resource need on this item is probably a medium staff resource need, about a quarter to a half time. And the public interest is low or unknown at this point because we didn't receive a lot of comment during the docket period.
Your vote, commissioners.
We're talking about A18.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Commissioner, okay. 3-0 to keep it. Thank you.
The next item is A19, which is the wireless communication facilities code update. This is a legally required code update to ensure that the county is in compliance with federal and state regulations related to wireless facilities. Some of these updates will ensure additional just changes to the code that are aligned with the federal law that was recently in place over the last several years. Staff continues to work on this item. This has garnered more public interest in the Planning Commission process. There was a stakeholder group that the board set up last year, and work continues in review with the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has already held a public hearing on this item and is working towards a recommendation. So we expect hopefully a final action before the board in late 2022 on this item.
County manager is gonna get mad at me if I don't put my thumb on.
Madam Chair, what is your, I missed, okay, thank you. 3-0.
The next item is boundary line adjustment standards. This is item A22. We did not receive any public comment on this proposal. This proposal is to update current county code language to align with, excuse me, state law and standards under the RCWs that define new requirements for boundary line adjustments. So it's a smaller code amendment. We estimate that this won't require a lot of staff time and that there will likely not be a lot of public interest based on the docket comment period. We do have a staff person currently assigned to this that is working on it. We're still in the research phase, so it has not gone to Planning Commission yet, but we anticipate that if this item is added, we could likely complete work on it within the year.
Three zero, thank you.
Okay, the next item is A23, which is our rural water availability item. These are code changes that may be related to the recent water availability plans. And at this point in time, this is mostly a placeholder item because there is still work going on regionally and with partnering organizations to determine what specific code amendments would be needed out of those watershed plans. So we don't have a good estimate of what type of staff time would be required for this amendment, but we have heard that there will likely be some suggested code changes probably midway through this year.
Well, isn't this a state requirement too, isn't it, that we get this done?
Yes, the watershed plans are a state requirement, and code changes that are needed to ensure that we can meet the standards in those watershed plans would, fall under the county's requirements under the state.
To keep it on the docket, 3-0, thank you.
The next item is A25. This is the Forest Lands Conversion Ordinance and Rural Tree Protection Standards. The board recently held a briefing in February on this item to discuss the scoping of this project. And the Urban Growth Area Tree Protection Standards will be reviewed with the UGA Joint Plan Code Amendments and also Joint Plan Updates. But this item received 42 comments. All of those comments were in support of the proposal. And some of the themes that were cited were that this aligns with the climate mitigation plan. Stronger tree protection is important. And the county's direction on scope to do a canopy analysis is a very good start to this item. One comment recommended that this be prioritized moderate. Others don't specify a priority, but they are strongly supportive of this proposal. So work has begun on this item. We estimate that this will likely fall into the medium or high staff resource need, and that the public interest is very high on this proposal as well. So review will likely continue throughout 2022 and into 2023 on this item.
3 thumbs up, thank you.
The next item is A27, which is the non-conforming code update. Previously, in past docket years, we were referring to this as the reasonable use exception code update. We did change that title to align a little bit better with what it is actually doing. But this proposal explores updates to the critical areas ordinance, specifically Title 24, to allow certain projects to bypass the reasonable use exception approval process, which will help to expedite permit review, both internally and for citizens. And we did not receive any comments on this proposal. We're estimating a low to medium staff resource need, and public interest at this time is low or unknown because we haven't received any comment as of yet. And work is underway on this item. We have plans to bring this proposal to Planning Commission before mid-year, and potentially a final action could be taken as early as Q3 2022, depending on priorities of the board.
Sideways, Commissioner Mejia, thumbs up. So we'll keep it on the docket for 2-1. Commissioner Messer voted to keep it on the preliminary docket. Thank you.
Great. The next item is the emergency housing ordinance permitting criteria flexibility. This is item number A24, not to be confused with the interim emergency housing ordinance that the board hears about every 6 months. This docket item would consider making interim regulations permanent and also look at if there are additional changes needed to our current regulations and the interim regulations to allow for additional flexibility and just make that permitting process clearer for both applicants and our permitting staff. If this item is not added to the docket and the county wishes to keep in place interim regulations, we will need to continue renewing those interim regulations every 6 months. So adopting permanent regulations would eliminate the need for the county to renew those interim regulations every 6 months.
And
We didn't receive, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The interim regulation is coming up, and I will bring this to the board on the agenda for Tuesday morning because it's coming to that end again. So just want to compliment what you just said.
Yep. And work need and staff resource need on this item, we're estimating a medium staff resource need and also a medium level of public interest on this proposal, potentially high level of public interest, depending on current conditions in the community. And work is ongoing on this item to consider making interim regulations permanent. We expect and hope that if this item is added to the docket, we could complete work and bring before the board for a final action towards the end of the year before a second interim renewal is needed this year. So we would need an interim renewal in June, but we hope that we could bring it forward for a final action before December.
What's the end result of a change from every 6 months, like you're gonna do it next Tuesday? What happens if we don't? We just keep doing it every 6 months?
Yeah, that's the option in this case.
But if we don't do it, we free up staff so they don't have to mess with it? Is that it?
This will make it permanent, so the board will not be renewing the interim every 6 months.
Right. But if we just continue the way we are, staff doesn't have to mess with it? Is that the way it is?
Well,
We just re-up it every 6 months?
Yeah, the board has the option to renew that every 6 months.
It's-
And the language on the interim will not change.
And does that make it more restrictive or less restrictive? Make it easier for citizens to create housing? I'm kind of always looking for ways to make affordable housing real. Make it attainable housing, I guess.
And Josh hand was up. Go ahead, Josh.
Can I answer the original question first, please? I think in terms of staff time, the interim renewal every 6 months does actually take quite a bit of staff time. And so if we were able to not do that, it would free up staff time going forward after the permanent regulation. It would be adopted by the board, actually, so choose. So the interim takes time.
But what, I guess my concern is, what makes it easier? What gives us more flexibility in creating attainable housing? Affordable housing. What's at play in here? You know, I know I probably don't have a good understanding of it. I'm just wondering.
So
What we
Commissioner,
can do to make it easier.
yeah, so Commissioner Edwards, the emergency housing ordinance is actually referring to our temporary use for homeless encampments. It's not necessarily affordable housing related. It's more related towards how we work towards a organized way of homeless encampments. It gives this particular ordinance request, or this particular ordinance amendment would provide flexibility in how we reviewed and what requirements were necessary or not necessary in a permit situation for those temporary temporary homeless encampments. So it's not necessarily affordable housing. It's looking at the homelessness and homeless encampments issues.
But I guess from my perspective, we've had to adjust different times. For an example, high barrier, low barrier. Do we require identification? Where are they from? All that. We've had to make those kind of adjustments. Does this affect either way the process of making those adjustments? If we make it permanent, then it's just locked in, and I'm gonna guess I'm gonna be opposed to that. I don't know. I mean,
Well, it makes permanent the board's decision. If the board wishes at any point to readdress that decision, the board has that purview.
yeah, but then you gotta go back through public hearings and a lot of staff input and stuff.
Which is what we're doing currently with the interim review every 6 months.
Yeah.
I will add that an ordinance that we renew every 6 months, the longer that we continue to do the interim ordinance, there is more risk of it looking like a permanent ordinance that we haven't taken it through the full public process. So I just wanted to make sure that that was also known and understood. But it is up to the board if they want to docket this item.
Yeah. Maybe also more simply, we're kind of doing double time on EHO right now.
If I could, this was my item, and I was willing to just basically pause it because I have higher priorities, frankly, that I want staff to work on. But if what I'm hearing is, like, if there's a net gain in time to pausing it, then I'll agree to pause it. But if you're telling me that, you know, you could get it done probably with the same amount of work as a couple of, you know, re-ups of it, then, you know, if there's no net gain in time, then let's just get it done. I mean, eventually I want this done because it's a tool we need in our toolbox, but it's not a highest priority to me right now. If doing the interim revisions will save staff time to be able to get some of these other priorities done, then I'm willing to pause it. But that's not really what I'm hearing. So could somebody answer that?
I think so. Maybe two questions. So I'll answer yours first, Commissioner Mintzer. Yes, I think that it would actually free up time going forward if we were able to shift the resources in the second interim review, the one that we do at the second of the year, into the permanent regulation. And then going into 2023, that's when the resources would be freed up. And then in terms of, I think Commissioner Edwards had a good point in terms of the different times that we've changed things. We have tweaked it over the, I guess, help me team, is it 7 times that we've re-upped?
Years, yeah.
Yep, 6 times.
6 times, thank you. So I think that the board has made some really, I think, crucial decisions in how this could be implemented if a property owner does want to use the EHO. I think that we're at a place now where we have tweaked it to where the board at this point at least, has come to some level of, I guess, stasis would be the right word.
So bottom line, if I keep this on the docket where it is, I'm not prejudicing the other priorities, because assuming that I'm gonna wanna continue instituting the interim. Okay, you guys are nodding, so I'm gonna support keeping it where it is then.
Thank you. That was helpful.
And let me just state a couple of things that I'm opposed to. And that one of them is low barrier. I am opposed to allowing these folks to continue to live a deviant lifestyle. Part of that deviant lifestyle is allowing them to shoot drugs up or do whatever they want in our public housing, if you will. And so that's one issue. I'm very concerned that we're providing this assistance to homeless individuals that come here from Kansas City. And I don't want to provide those folks from Kansas City any of this help. I want to help our own people. So by making it permanent, I guess it alleviates my ability to argue for my concerns, I guess, that's what I'm concerned with.
So the permanent process would still need to go through the whole planning commission and public hearing. You'll have lots of opportunity, Commissioner, to discuss the merits of the EHO for sure.
It also, I think we may need to separate what is operational versus what is in the code. And the code as it states right now gives the allowance, in this case, for the director to process the use of a particular property. They may manage a homeless encampment. The operations aspect that you have not necessarily is included on this. There has to be prescriptive as to what low barrier, high barrier, because perhaps that's outside of the scope of this. But correct me if I'm off on this one. It's a little bit different. It's two different elements in this conversation. And I want to make sure that we separate that, if I may.
No, that's helpful. As with all of these, this is the vision, and then the implementation happens at the permit level. And you're right on, County Manager, in terms of the operational requirements that would be required. We definitely review those items.
We have made adjustments to those operational requirements in the past, though, where requiring ID, low barrier, high barrier, guns, drugs, whatever they are, we've made little adjustments as time went on, and I want to continue that. And the reason I say that is I think the community has finally had enough of this tolerating deviant behavior in the name of individual rights. And I think there's going to be more pressure brought to bear that we implement a tough love philosophy rather than the summer of love philosophy. So that's my concern.
No, but if I may.
Yeah.
If the intent is to have the public be engaged and provide comments, this item allows to do that. Really, because this is the public process. The staff will go through and it will get a lot of comments from the community that perhaps may influence how the final language will be coming before the board.
But the counter side of that is that every 6 months, the public gets a chance to make comments and make adjustments. Where if we make it permanent now, then we're stuck with it unless we go back for a whole ordinance change. That's my concern, that we accept the low barrier, summer of love philosophy, and that's it. No more discussion on it. If my read of the public is right, that the public's about had it with tolerating all this deviant behavior, I think it's better that we have that 6-month review. So that's where I'm at.
So how Commissioner Mensah would like to keep it? Sideways?
Yeah, well, I'd like to hear from the chair, but I mean, for me, I came into this thinking I was gonna go prelim because I wanted to save time for the other important priorities. But if it's really not gonna save time over the medium term, then I'd rather just get it done, because And Commissioner Edwards and I have had the same debate at least 7 times every 6 months for the last 4 years. So I don't want to have that debate again. Commissioner Mejia, go ahead.
So I came in with kind of the same train of thought where, you know, is it going to save time if we put this in the preliminary docket? And what I'm hearing from Josh, it's not really, because it's going, you know, we still have to do the 6-month renewal that's coming up. And then after that, they're going to be working, instead of working on that other 6-month renewal, staff will be working on getting the permanent solution done. So if we were to put it on the preliminary docket though, you know, then that person would just be preparing to have it for another interim, and it wouldn't free up any staff time this year to go on to another project.
Correct.
Correct.
And it also would not free up staff time in 2023 because we'd have to continue renewing it on an interim basis.
Okay, well, and how much would it free up, you know, what's kind of the staff, how much staff time does this take?
Go for it, Maya, Chris.
Yeah, this item is kind of a medium staff time item. We estimate about 0.3 FTE to complete this. However, it has garnered significant public interest in the past. So, you know, if we're moving through a planning commission public hearing and the board public hearing, there could be a lot of public interest and public comment that could push that staff time a little bit up. Either way, with the interim renewals, we are looking at about a 1/4 FTE to 1/2 an FTE every single year to renew that. So, and that would carry into 2023, whereas this would be about 0.3 to complete the permanent regulations this year.
And I would add, just so that the public is aware, this by no means to kind of address the concept of the summer of love from Commissioner Edwards. This is setting the ground rules for a potential applicant. To date, we have not issued any permit related to BHO. We did have one applicant, and it's got to come from a willing property owner. So this doesn't allow a free-for-all of homeless encampments. This sets the ground rules to moderate and ensure that there's consistency and input from the public. As the county manager stated, this is that opportunity for the public to provide their input on what the rules are. This is not the allowance of a permit. That goes much further down, and like I said, we have not even issued one of those to date, if that's helpful at all.
Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
I guess I just want to have the debate every 6 months. That's what I'm looking for, is so the public can have their say every 6 months, because I see a frustration building and they don't want any more summer of love type things. So we all see how that turned out for Seattle, how it turned out for the mayor of Seattle. And I want to have that debate every 6 months. That's where I'm at.
It's interesting, you know, Commissioner Mason, that's what did you do?
Well, that's what makes our democracy so great. We get to have our discussions and we have cordial debate. That's good.
Is the board ready to provide,
I think it's healthy.
thumbs?
Well, can I just jump in real quick? Sorry, County Manager.
Go ahead.
I think that was a really good kind of breakdown in that concept. So to have the debate every 6 months costs an FTE working on one of these other projects.
Well, money well spent.
And I want to be clear, because it's not about me not wanting to have debate. I want to have debate about the merits of a particular proposal. I don't want to have a debate about whether the toolbox should exist for that even concept to even be allowed, the allowance. That's the debate I don't want to have. The proper siting, the proper location, the proper parameters, that's the debate I want to have. But I am tired of this continual debate about whether there should even be the ability to have that debate. Because if you don't have this interim ordinance, you can't have that debate. And that's the point I made with the Carpenter Road. We ended up deciding not to do it, but it was a good discussion that needed to occur. And we heard from the community, but that conversation couldn't have even happened. So it's not about It's not about debate or not debate, it's about what, debate about what, and what kind of debate, and that's where we disagree.
Fair enough. So is the board ready?
I wanna have the debate every 6
So-
months, that's where I'm at.
So you want to put it on the preliminary docket or down?
I don't wanna move this thing forward.
Okay, so it's down. Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Metzger said to keep it, so,
Might as well just
yeah,
rip off the Band-Aid.
keep it on the docket 2-1 with Commissioner Edwards, let it down. Sure. Thank you.
Moving onward, item number A26 is the transfer of development rights and purchase of development rights programs review. This would be a code amendment that looks at all of our zoning codes, titles 20, 21, 22, and 23. And previously, this item was kind of rolled into the community-driven ag review proposal. It was joined with that. We did pull it out this preliminary docket cycle because that will allow this to proceed independently and the board can prioritize it separately if they choose to add it to the official docket. We did receive 6 comments on this item. All of those were in support because this item preserves existing farmland and that the TDR and PDR programs need updating. Without funding for farmland, then it's harder to preserve those areas. And most of those comments recommended a moderate priority. Some said that this proposal deserves a higher consideration. We estimate that the staff resource need on this proposal would likely fall into the higher staff resource need category because it will require interjurisdictional coordination with the cities. And also there's probably a medium level of public interest on this proposal. We have a lot of interested citizens in the agriculture community that are watching this item. So we have begun stakeholder outreach on this as part of the broader community driven review of ag item. And the timeline on this would be heavily dependent on how the board prioritizes it if it is added to the docket. But we likely wouldn't see a final action until 2023, even if it were a high priority. And that's my remarks on this item.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
On this particular issue, when was the last time this was utilized?
So we have processed applications for transfer of development rights as recently as last year.
Yeah, it was a year ago, they were processed one, yeah.
Yep.
And
This,
did we use it? What, could you tell us just a little bit about it? Was it a half acre here or there or 100 acres? What was it?
So
And
it was-
it doesn't get used very often, does it?
so it is market driven. We're the facilitators of these rights or these credits. And the applicant comes in and asks us to prepare or approve how many credits they can sell. And then that goes out on the open market for that particular entity with those credits to sell to a developer. So we don't facilitate any of the actual transactions. We just approve how many credits or the transfer of rights that they would have.
So you're right, Commissioner Edwards. It does not get used very often. It was used just recently, but this review would be to look at that market analysis, think about that supply and demand, and how we can use it more functionally for protection of agriculture in our community. So you're right, it hasn't been, and kind of the thought is why not, and how do we make it better?
Yeah, I participated in a half-day summit that was done with staff, and it was trying to figure out why isn't it being used? What can we do to
We
turn
hadn't
the
used it.
dials and make
About
it?
10 years we hadn't used it.
Yeah, so I thought that's kind of what this was about, is try to get it, turn the dials and tweak the parameters so we can make it more robust.
Okay.
County Manager?
This is a question to Josh, and it's will this give us additional tools related to the land that we need to purchase on the HCP?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Chris.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because
Okay.
that's what.
What do you want me to argue against that? You got Commissioner Edwards' thumb up.
The Commissioner Edwards has been an advocate, really, is to purchase the development rights, maintain the land, that we can have a dual use.
Yeah.
And this will give us a
Thank
tool
you.
to do so.
Thank you for that clarification.
I just want to circle back.
Very
on
good.
that. Thank you.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. 3-0.
Great. So,
Jump down to the joint plans and then go back up to the new proposals, you think, or?
yeah, let's go ahead and jump down to the joint plan items since those are previously officially docketed. If it's easier for the board, we can just do all three at once since these are, they're kind of the same item. But we,
Yeah.
Yeah, can we just, because of the time, I want to make sure that, so we combine them.
Isn't Tumwater?
yeah, let's combine them. So there's 3 joint plan items. These are for updates to the Tumwater, Olympia, and Lacey UGA zoning ordinances. The county administers these development regulations for building permits that fall within the urban growth areas, and they haven't been updated in a very long time. But this would look at making our county codes more consistent with the city codes in those areas, in urban growth areas, so that when places are annexed, they are they kind of already align with what the city has in place. It's not a blanket requirement that the county outright adopts what the city has in their regulations. It's just a consideration to better align our UGA codes with what the city has in place. And there will be public hearings and opportunities for the board to discuss the details of those items. We did not receive a lot of public comment on these proposals. There were a few comments from the cities that were in support of maintaining these on the docket. So,
And what we've seen is that clarifying the codes between the UGAs actually helps applicants and reduces confusion for the applicants as they're going through the process. I will say that part of this discussion in the joint plans is ensuring flexibility for our applicants within our code. So as Maya said, we're not going to blanket adopt the city's development code regulations in the UGA. That's what these discussions are for in the joint plan, but to create clarity for applicants in the UGA.
Commissioner Messer, thumbs up?
Yeah.
Commissioner Edwards, thumbs up? Yeah, thank you, 3-0.
And one of them's already done, right? So we get to cross that one
Kind
off.
of though, didn't we have we got part of it done.
so we completed the joint plan, which is a comprehensive plan item. That's CPA 1 for the Tumwater joint plan. The zoning ordinance updates will follow after the joint plans are complete. So we haven't begun these in earnest. But once we get through all the joint plans, the work will begin on these specifically.
So we got the vision done, Commissioner Mentzer, on one of them, and now we're looking at the action.
Yeah, I remember. Once I said that, I remembered that that's how we were structuring it. Thank you. Okay, what's next?
Great, so we'll jump back up to some of the preliminary and new proposals. Let's go to the resource use title notice for designated mineral lands, agriculture, and long-term forestry. So this is a smaller code amendment that would require when a person purchases a property that's within one of those resource use areas, whether it be agriculture, forestry, or mining, that they file a notice and sign that with their sale of the property, acknowledging that they are purchasing property within one of those areas. This has been on and off the docket and on preliminary dockets since as long ago as 2007. It started out as an ag committee proposal only related to agriculture. And midway through about 2016, it kind of transitioned to be broader and include all of the resource lands, mineral and forestry. This is probably a low staff resource need and a low public interest item. And we've done some preliminary research on this proposed amendment. It could be very difficult to implement because it would be a notice signed at the time of sale of a property. So unlike some of the requirements that we have in our code already that require a notice be signed when we permit something in those areas, this is specific to when someone sells a property in those areas. And it could add potential cost and process for applicants. So that's the gist of this. We didn't receive any public comment on it. We did reach out to the Ag Committee about the preliminary docket, and they did not submit a comment on this item specifically. So,
I'm sorry, I just jumped in. But my question is in regards to, since this is something that you do at signing of a property, have we asked maybe for feedback from the realtors?
we did, I believe I notified someone from OMB of the preliminary docket and all of the items. They didn't comment on this specifically, but we would need to do work and outreach with the Realtors Association about what implementing this would look like if it were added to the docket. It's just been kind of this weird item that's hung out on the preliminary docket for many, many years. So.
And it was brought forth by the Ag Committee, is that what but there hasn't been any input since it's been kind of in limbo?
Yeah, that's correct. So as far back as 2007 is when the Ag Committee initially proposed this. The intention there was kind of this right to farm act and protecting ag and making sure people know that there are potentially nuisances like dust and noise that come with purchasing a property near those areas. But it has evolved since then by past boards.
Commissioner Messer, on the preliminary docket.
How much time is this gonna take?
This would likely be a low staff time requirement, potentially up towards a medium staff time requirement, just because we would need to look into how to implement something like this, since it's at the sale of a property and not something that goes along with permitting. And the public interest, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say the public interest would probably be low on this just based on our past docket comment periods.
So Commissioner Mejia, let me try and plain talk it a little bit. And Maya, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the genesis of this is you get city folk moving out to the country and they move next to a farm and then they're upset that their farm is stinky or has dust. And so the farmers wanted the city folk who were purchasing property out in the country to sign a document at the time of sale that says, we know it's going to be stinky. So then later they're not upset. And how do you enforce that? How do you keep a handle on that? That's why it's just kind of out there in limbo. And then over time, it evolved to also include the forestry and mining so that we know that people, when they move to a property, that they're going to be cutting down trees, that's what a chainsaw sounds like. It might be noisy, or that there might be dust from mining. It is, as Maya said, a difficult item to enforce, that it's at the time of sale. I think it was an attempt by the Ag Committee back in 2007 to just kind of keep peace with new neighbors, but unclear how we would actually implement this item. Is that helpful?
Yeah. No, it just seems really common sense, and it seems like we're getting into the issues of neighbors now. Like that's how I feel like, and I hate that it's been in limbo for so long. So where I'm at is either if we're not going to move forward on it, just remove it, because it seems very like we're getting really into the nitpickiness of it, of issues between neighbors and someone saying it's stinky, and I mean, how do you even, it's not a code thing. How do you enforce that? Like what, you're just signing a paper acknowledging like, yes, I know it's gonna be stinky. It just seems, I don't know.
Can I-
And maybe, go ahead, sir, maybe you know more about this.
Maybe I can confuse you more?
Maybe.
Okay, no, I'm confused on it, is what I mean by that. I have to wonder when we're asking someone to sign something, generally there's a legal background involved, or it means something. Does this really mean anything? And kind of where I'm going with this is, in rural America, you know, when they spread chicken manure or something on the field, it only stinks until it rains or for 2 weeks or whatever. And if somebody is selling that property, is there any legal connotation that goes with any of this? And I'm kind of like with Commissioner Mejia, are we trying to get in the middle of refereeing the whole neighborhood thing on this issue? We're still talking about rural America. This isn't in the urban core or incorporated areas. So, I don't know, do we put on there that there's gonna be chickens crowing at sunup, but sunup changes, you know, from 4 in the morning to 7 in the morning, or whatever? I just wonder, are we creating ourselves a problem here?
That's where staff has said it's difficult to enforce and implement.
Yeah,
So I'll say the same thing.
and I think if I go back, what the agricultural committee suggested back in 2006, is it avoids that controversy down the road, because if a property owner buys a property next to a farm, a cattle ranch, you know, and then 2 years later, the property owner who moved next to the cattle ranch complains the smell is, so the property owner of the cattle ranch says, well, you signed this agreement, it was full knowledge that you will be living next to a cattle ranch. So, but the county, it will be extremely difficult for the county to be the judge and jury of that.
Yeah, I mean, so now does the county get, if we do this, then the county gets drug into the legal dispute between these two neighbors now because the chicken's crowing? I don't want anything to do with that, to be honest with you. That's my concern.
So, what I'm hearing is Commissioner Mejia thumbs down and you thumbs down and Commissioner Mercer sideways?
Yeah, for now. I mean, I just don't see this as a solution yet to whatever the problem is.
No, for now, I mean, you took it out, the conversation is over.
Well, if staff, if I go sideways with Commissioner Mentzer, staff still has to keep working on it.
No, you will revisit this
Just
item
means
this
we can
year.
review it next year.
Yeah. No, the
Nobody
staff will
worked on
not
it.
work on it.
Well, and what happens if it goes away? What's the difference? Then it has to go through a whole nother process to bring it back.
You will not see this item until somebody
Applies.
applies.
I mean, it could apply to this long-term industrial business that we're talking about reviewing too. I mean, I can see a lot of applications where it becomes complicated. And that's why I don't want it there yet. But it can always bring it back, I guess, right?
So I try to understand your vote.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Mejia
He's
are on the
prompting
same.
Commissioner Mejia.
No, I think I'm voting with Commissioner Mejia on this issue.
You sound like you're voting more with what you're saying with Commissioner Menser.
No, I can see a lot of different things. We sometimes create nightmares for ourselves, is what I'm.
So based on what I'm hearing, you may consider just put it on the preliminary docket and you continue the conversation next year.
But why even have it on there? And it's just another unfinished item.
The staff will not work on that.
Yeah.
The staff, if you put in the preliminary docket, the staff will not touch it.
I know, but I don't see any interest from the public on this and stuff. That's my concern. We're trying to solve a problem I'm not sure we have.
Fair enough.
And then there's no interest from the ad committee either. They didn't provide any like feedback on this at all?
They did not.
Okay.
Sounds like there's 2 votes to remove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's hurting my feelings, so that's fine. That's fine.
I was trying to come up with a compromise with
No,
this.
I'm good. Do what you gotta do.
So I'd really like to see how you vote on this.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean, you're talking, that's great, but how your vote is. Down?
Well, yeah, take it off for now.
So thumbs down, Commissioner Mejia, thumbs down?
Thumbs down for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been removed.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item. This is a new item, clarification on expansion of non-conforming non-residential uses and structures. This is a hearing examiner submitted item. This kind of came out of some experience with permit applications that were coming through, and the request is to provide additional clarification in the code on when expansion of certain types of non-conforming uses, particularly those that are not residential, like schools, and looking at creating an allowance within the special use permit code for the hearing examiner to approve exceptions to building coverage size or what's currently allowed for building height. So it would allow more flexibility for the applicant and also for the hearing examiner to approve these types of permits. There is a current pathway for applicants who fall into this category. However, currently they have to apply for a variance, which is an entirely separate permit. So they are applying for 2 permits, twice the cost, and also twice the staff time work. And these changes would look at language to see if there's an option to streamline that. We didn't receive any comments on this proposal. It's probably a medium staff resource need and a low public interest.
Maya, did this one come out of the Yelm School District application?
Yes.
I believe it was young, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a good one in our partnership with the hearings examiner, where she saw our code was complicated for them and made a suggestion on how to make it easier in the future. Our staff did what they had to do with the way that our code was written, and the hearing examiner suggested a change. So this is that.
But also I think it was in a couple of appeals the board heard, it was related to this item and really it's because the hearing examiners didn't have the avenue of going through the non-conforming use. It came to the board and the board made that decision accordingly. But I think this will really streamline the process, if I may. Sideways, thumbs up, thumbs up. So sideways, Commissioner Menster, and 2 thumbs up, Commissioner Edwards and Mejia. So this item is added to the document.
Thank you. So the next item is another new item proposed by Development Services within CPED, the update signboard posting procedures. And currently, county staff is required to post signboards for certain types of applications and then also pick those signboards up following a public hearing. This would change the code to request that the applicant come to the county, pick up the sign, and then post it on their property. And following the hearing, return the sign to the county. So it reduces staff time in development services that is spent going out to these properties, posting the sign, retrieving it. And development services states this would result in a significant amount of staff time saved. It's a very high priority for development services because that time could be allocated to project reviews and in-office work. And there's no change to the permit process, only the requirement of who is required to post the sign on the property. So the county would still be providing that sign to the applicants. This is a low staff resource need and probably a low level of public interest.
And this is this is a good place for the board to kind of determine what you view as the appropriate level of customer service. So it's really about logistics. Right now, the same folks that are reviewing permit and plans, our medium to high level staff, are driving out to these sites twice to post these signs because that's what the code says we have to do. Where the applicants are also coming in to submit their applications or ask questions. At that point, we could give them the sign and they could take it out to their own property because they're going to go home anyway. So the question is really, do you want development services providing the customer service of driving out to the project twice? Or do you want development service to provide the customer service of having more time to review permits and plans? And what development services is saying is they think that their time is better spent reviewing the permits and plans.
I agree with development services.
Sideways, Commissioner Edwards, thumbs up.
Yep.
Commissioner Messer, sideways. Commissioner Mejia, thumbs up. This item is added to the docket. Thank you.
Great. The next item is another new item. This is a board initiated item to review the no shooting zones within Thurston County. There has been a significant amount of public comment about shooting that's been going on, specifically in Black Lake and Lawrence Lake, but not explicitly those areas, other areas in the county as well. We received 9 comments. All of them were in support of reviewing specific areas. Some of those were in support of maintaining target practice. Others were in support of eliminating shooting zones that are within their neighborhoods. And I did reach out to the sheriff's office and see if they had a position on this proposal to review these areas because they enforce these areas. And I did not get a comment back from them. So this would probably be a higher staff resource need because it would look at population data and overlay that with public areas and a medium to high level of public interest.
And this is kind of an interesting one. So CPED, is building and land use in terms of our zoning, our codes and ordinances that we're within our purview. This is in Title 10, which is not within CPED's standard jurisdiction, but we will, since we have the bandwidth in terms of what we do, facilitate the process. And when Maya says that the comments that we received have been said to review the shooting zones, what that means is spans the gamut. Some of them are remove them, some of them are make them wider, allow target practice, and so it's all across the board. This will be a difficult and contentious issue.
Do we want to, we're ready?
Commissioner Edwards, do you have any questions or?
Oh, I don't know if I have any questions. Hey, this is, this could be attributed to global warming. Yeah. How's that? I bet you're wondering, how's that? Right?
I'm curious about that.
Well, I know one of the complaints out on the lakes is that the geese don't migrate anymore. Pretty warm here all winter long. And they stay here and they're doing their thing on docks and water quality and all that kind of stuff. It's a big piece of it. So, but what's the answer? I don't know the answer to that. I just wanted to throw that comment in.
Could I provide a suggestion?
Yeah.
And the board has received a lot of public requests, testimony, as well as Maya stated. Consider there's going to be a lot of work on this. The board may consider to put in the preliminary docket just to be responsive to the public comments, and then you will revisit the item next year.
Oftentimes I'm not against what you're talking about, I'm just saying that oftentimes we're at odds with the state game department as well. So it is kind of a complicated
Very complicated.
issue, but really it is developing into a water quality issue and other issues now too. So I if we do that, we can always remove it later, right? But we just don't have staff time, I don't think, to work on this.
Commissioner Menzer?
Yeah,
Sorry, sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry.
You did not interrupt me, ma'am.
I want this addressed, but we don't have staffing. We didn't have staffing based on my own set of votes, and I've been outvoted on 3 or 4 items, so we have even less staffing than I thought. So I'd like to keep this on preliminary docket. It was my item because I've been bombarded with folks from Black Lake in my district that would like this addressed, but
I'm good with that.
3 side farms, so we'll keep it on the preliminary docket.
I would like to get to this at some point.
Someday, you know.
Thank you.
County Manager, I just want to do a time check. We've got 3 more items and we're at 12 o'clock.
Please, let's get them done.
Yeah, let's get through that. Yeah, my next meeting is with Commissioner Mejia, so I'm sure we can skip.
Well, let's try and jump through these
Push
ones
through
then. The next item is another new board initiated item to review SEPA comment period timelines. The board has received public comment on both sides of this in favor of lengthening and shortening comment period times. We received 9 comments during the docket comment period. 8 were in support of reviewing this, and 1 was a comment from the Department of Ecology that was didn't really state a position. It was more aligned with kind of policy and what exists under state law. So the comments that we did receive in support of this item said that 14 days is far too short for a comment period, and that there should be more time for citizens to review and comment. They also recommended this be a high priority of the county. And then the Department of Ecology comment stated that there might be limited flexibility in actually changing our comment times. That's because the minimum comment times are set out in state law already. However, maximum comment times, with the exception of for EISs and larger scoping projects, are mostly silent under state law. So there would have to be work with the state and also the Department of Ecology on this item. We estimate it to be a low to a medium staff resource need. The code change would be fairly simple, but we'd have to work with the state to see what we're allowed to do. And the public interest is probably medium on this item.
I mean, to me, that's a pretty, maybe ecology just felt like it had to say that, but it's not really relevant. We're not gonna reduce, I guess they don't know if we're gonna go up or down, so they have to tell us that you can't go down, but obviously the whole request is to go longer, so I don't think ecology's concern is really relevant. We wouldn't go less than 14 days. The proposal is to go to 21 or 28 or whatever, because people don't have enough time to get the expertise and their nonprofit groups together to convene. This all came from the Beaver Creek proposal, where the citizen groups were like, really, you're gonna tell me in 14 days we're supposed to we didn't know this was coming, we're supposed to get our stakeholders together. We decide we need a lawyer or an environmental consultant. We're supposed to be able to make decision on the financing and then go out and hire the consultant and and have that person review and then provide us input. I mean, it's nonsense to think that could happen in 14 days. That's the argument. And I think they're 100% correct. The question for me is just whether we have the staffing time to do this. Again, there's higher priorities for me, but I don't really understand why this would take any staff time. I think we can use whiteout and put, 30 instead of 14.
Let's just change it to 21,
When we're
whatever.
done, so I'm inclined to put this on because I don't think it would create much effort.
But it's about the public process, because the development community may have something to say about extending the review period of SEPA process, because it will
It's
extend.
just more delay, time's money.
And that's why you're not gonna go to 90 days or
So
anything
that's
like
what,
that.
and that's what takes time and effort, is the
Yeah.
public process. But you're right, just picking a number may be as easy as.
But anyway, I was kind of thinking sideways on this one, but I'd like to hear what my seatmates think.
I would like to know, how much do we estimate this take in staff time?
This is probably a low to medium staff time requirement, only because potentially we could have a lot of public interest on this proposal. As Commissioner Mentzer stated, the code change would be very simple, but the public is very interested in this item, and we could see more comments from the development community that are on the opposite side of this. So,
And is this something we could contract out for?
Yeah, good idea.
Potentially.
I like it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
As long as we have budget for professional services.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, of course.
So the contractor, yes, as long as we have budget for professional services. Just want to clarify that.
Which we don't currently for this specific item.
Yeah, we don't have professional services for planning.
Let's just change it to 21 days. This.
You done?
No.
Okay, well,
I mean, I'm,
I don't want to hold up progress, but I do understand what my CPED is saying about it.
I'm in support of it. And I've heard this a lot too. So I'm a thumbs up.
I have to say, I'm a thumbs down mainly because I want to simplify it. I'd probably sign off on 21 right now, get it over with, but, so I'm down. I can't create more delay for the process, and here's why. A lot of times, it'll go, there's no enforcement mechanism whatsoever on any of this. So it'll go to, I don't know, the game department or the fire department. And the person that gets it's on vacation and it sits there and it sits there and sits there. And we do have, we end up with a lot of delay. So I'm not in favor of anything that contributes to delay. So I guess I'm out.
I'm gonna go sideways. I don't wanna lose this item, but we just don't have the capacity.
Oh, then I'll go sideways and we'll,
Okay.
there we go, we got her solved.
Then sideways is okay with me then.
Thank you.
so leaving that one on the preliminary, moving down to our citizen requests, the last two items. The first one of these is a previous citizen application that was submitted in 2020 and left on the preliminary last year in 2021. This is the Natural Landmark Program. And this request asks that the county look into establishing a new natural landmark program. This would be different from the open space tax program or conservation futures that the county is already implementing. And it would allow property owners to voluntarily enroll smaller properties into a county database to conserve features on their properties like the natural environment or people who have significant stands of trees or small habitat refuges. There is a question about how the county would facilitate a program like this. It would require ongoing staff costs in order to manage this type of a program. And if docketed, staff would investigate what type of ongoing costs would be needed to administer this type of program and how the county would track properties over time. So we received 58 comments on this proposal, 6 were against and 52 in favor. Those in favor said that they are supportive because it protects trees. It allows landowners an option that can't fit into other types of programs like open space or don't want to fund ongoing costs for conservation easements. Those that are against the proposal state that tree preservation could cause additional issues like downed trees and high wind storms. It also, some folks cited that this violates U.S. property ownership rights by preserving a property in perpetuity to include after sale of those properties to new landowners. and that the cost to preserve small properties should be on the burden of the landowner and not the current and future taxpayers. So those are the major themes that we've received for this proposal.
Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
I understand the intent of this, but I see a lot of bugaboos coming along with something like this. And that last statement is, to me, a true statement. Why not have the landowner figure this out through, I don't know, giving it to a land trust, putting a blight on the property, doing something. But could you imagine somebody that likes redwood trees in the name of somebody, whatever, or group, they're gonna plant it, they wanna have it protected. And pretty soon that redwood tree is 300 feet tall, not pretty soon, but eventually, and it's gonna tip over on somebody's house, you know? Who takes care of that? It's got a long reach, a lot of problems with doing this, and I think there's probably a reason it hasn't been done before. So I'm just gonna use that as an example that, you know, it'd be good to be compassionate with everybody's requests, but the reality of implementing, overseeing, regulating, looks like we'd be creating a nightmare. That's my take.
Oh, you're waiting for me?
No, I'm just done. I'm sorry, I should have said that's it for me.
Oh, I saw the county manager. I was like, wait, is it me? I was just reading the comments from the citizens. Commissioner Menser, any questions?
No questions.
So if I, the board would like to proceed, Commissioner Edwards down,
Yeah, I'm done.
Commissioner Messer up.
I have a lot of questions, but I want those questions answered, kind of like with Beaver Creek. So I think this should be explored.
Commissioner
A lot
Mejia.
of community interest.
I don't like leaving items on limbo. And we put this on limbo last time around, and I was in support of it last time around. And I got outvoted on this item. We didn't hear the comments that we're hearing now last time, and I'm wondering, you know, why that was the case last time and not this time
There was a
around.
big article in the newspaper about it. That might be one reason.
Part of it.
Ah, I did not see that.
Where the citizen was very critical of the county for not taking action on his proposal.
Oh, I did not see that.
So, I mean, like I say, I have the same questions as everybody else, but just what you said, Commissioner Mejia, I punted on this, I think, the last 2 years. And there's a lot of support for the concept, and I've just got questions, and I'm never gonna be able to know until I get a little bit of work from staff to answer those questions, and you can't keep it sitting there forever, so I'm willing to invest a little effort into it, given the high interest level it's had.
Yeah, I would like some of those questions answered too, because now those points that were brought up, I would like to get those answered as well. So I'll do a thumbs up
Thank you.
on this item.
Did we hear how much staff time this was gonna take? I heard it
Yeah,
would
this
take a
would-
lot.
This would be a medium staff time item and probably a high level of public interest just
Okay.
based on the docket comment period that we had.
Last but not least,
The last item is a new citizen initiated item to update section B 103.1 of the International Fire Code. And the request is to reduce fire flow requirements. I believe this has been referred to as the Juanita Tarman request.
Is the
And
what request?
Juanita Tarman, am I saying that last name right, Josh?
Small
Go ahead.
businesses, I think, yeah, that was the premise. How they can.
Yep,
small businesses.
The premise from the applicant is that most of our fire codes are designed for big box businesses, and they make it inherently hard for smaller businesses to meet those fire code requirements. So it requests a code change to decrease fire flow requirements for certain types of uses. We received 3 comments, all in support of this item. And one of those was from Olympia Master Builders. They did comment on this proposal. We estimate that this would probably be a lower staff resource need and a lower level of public interest. As Josh mentioned on a previous proposal for the no shooting zones, this is a Title 14 change, which is the building code. So CPED typically administers and does changes to our zoning code. We're not required to docket building code amendments, and development services typically reviews those. So there is a process outlined to move this forward regardless, but we can keep it on the docket as a way of public transparency if the board chooses to pursue it.
That's right. And I think County Manager jump in here, but the intent was to try and get some public comment on this item. It is moving forward. Brett is leading this. He was reaching out to the different fire chiefs throughout the county. So whether or not you make a decision on docketing this item, we think that we've heard that it's moving forward and will be brought to your attention either way. So this one actually doesn't require a decision if you don't want to. It's happening through Brett's group.
I guess I don't really understand that completely.
So-
I want to go along with the master builders because I want to have some flexibility in there so that one size does not fit all, because that's probably reality.
So, let me see if we understand this, Josh. This item can be accomplished without the board taking an action to docket it.
Correct.
Then let's do that.
Yeah. So, the question is, then, the vote is to remove from the docket.
But we're still gonna do it?
Yeah, and we're gonna do it through an administrative process.
We're just not docketing it, but we're not.
Is that
we're not
legal?
opposed to
Everything
it.
legal to do that? Okay, I'm okay with it, as long as we're addressing the issue.
Yeah. Thumbs up to keep it on the docket or to take it out of the docket?
To keep it on the docket.
I think 2 of us are take it off the docket, right?
Take it out of the docket because, as Josh has stated, that can be accomplished through an administrative process, not necessarily docketing it. So the work is still gonna be done through a more expedited way.
Docketing it would just add public process elements
The
that. we
public
don't
process to
necessarily-
it.
Yeah.
But it can be done administratively, Josh, without,
Correct. Yep. So this will be done through the development services group, through Brett's group, and he's already working on it. The outreach doesn't require as much intensity as the items that are on the docket does. And so we could remove it from the docket and we'll continue working on it. And
I
bring
think
it to, go ahead, sorry.
were the citizens advised of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we wanted to just add this extra layer of opportunity for public input. And so that we bundled this with the rest of the document items to provide that opportunity. So it's belt and suspenders, essentially.
So that's it.
So can you tell us, now that we're done with all these, when do we have to do the prioritization process that's coming? That's scheduled?
Yeah, Chris or Maya, do you have that ready to go?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the next steps, and then Chris, you can jump in about a timeline for prioritization. So the immediate next step is that staff will prepare the official dockets for the board to take a formal action on them at a Tuesday afternoon meeting. I could probably get that done and prepared in preparation for next week's Tuesday afternoon meeting if the board wishes to make that action that
Yeah,
soon.
that's asking a lot.
I think she has a little sense of urgency to get this through as well.
And following formal adoption of the 2 dockets will be prioritization. Chris, do you want to touch on that?
Right. So once we know when we'll bring the docket forward for official approval of the items. We'll work with the board office to set the meeting to go through and prioritize these. We'll give a few weeks for everybody to digest the information and then bring the entire official docket back before the Board of County Commissioners so that we can do something similar and prioritize those items.
Okay.
Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
no, the county manager was gonna say something. We got it.
Oh.
I interrupted him, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Maya, if you're able to submit an AIS, go ahead and do it, and we'll facilitate that. I understand the sense of urgency. So obviously, the board has already voted on this. They just need to formalize the vote and approve what they already decided. So that will be on Tuesday afternoon, if you're able to submit an AIS.
Okay.
And before you close, I want to confirm the votes on the development code document, if you give me the room.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I've got a question of the county manager. So as we move forward in the process now, and I've got a change of heart. Somebody gets a hold of me and say, hey, you dummy, why'd you do that? You know, and I agree with them. So the final vote is yet to come. Is that right?
That's what we're discussing on Tuesday.
Right, but I mean, so somebody does want to change their vote, you can do that. What's the process?
You may want to bring, in the morning of Tuesday morning, when we review the agenda item for the afternoon,
Okay,
and request the board whether, I think since you already exercised a vote, someone will vote, then what you need to request for the board members if they'd like to open that item for reconsideration.
okay, well, I guess what I'm getting at is we get scrutinized for making decisions. Criticized, I guess, is a better way to put it. We get criticized for making decisions in these meetings but the final decision is coming on Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
And so
Today, you
they
just,
still have an option if somebody has a change of heart, I guess. That's all.
so could I spend a couple minutes just to confirm the votes on the development code docket, Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
So let me just walk you through, just make sure that my notes are correct. Item A7, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. A6, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. 8, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. A13, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. A18, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. A19, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. A22, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. 823, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. 825, 3-0 to keep it on the docket. 827, 2-1 to keep it on the docket, where Commissioner Messick voted to put it on the preliminary docket. 824, to keep it on the docket and 2-1. And Commissioner Edwards voted no to remove that from the docket. 826, unanimous to keep it on the docket. Moving on to the new proposals. The resource for designated mineral lands, long-term agriculture, long-term forestry, 2-1 to remove it from the docket, where Commissioner Messer voted to keep it on the preliminary docket. The next is the clarification on an expansion of non-conforming non-residential use and structures, is to add it to the docket on a 2-1, where Commissioner Messer voted to keep it on the preliminary docket. Update signboard posting procedures, to add it to the docket on a 2-1, where Commissioner Messer voted to keep it on the preliminary docket. Shooting zones, to keep it on the preliminary docket on a unanimous decision. Review CPED comment period timelines, 3-0 to keep it on the preliminary docket. The next three, JP2, JP3, and JP4, unanimous to add it to the docket. And the last two, natural landmark program, is to add it to the docket on a 2-1, where Commissioner Edwards voted against it, to remove it from the docket. And lastly, but not least, the International Fire Code is removed from the docket with an asterisk. This particular item will be achieved through an administrative process. And that's it.
Okay. So will be more to come on the final decisions. And if you have a change of heart,
Now, we also did,
let's see, the comprehensive plan, there was,
Yeah, I already went through that.
you already went through those, okay, good. Okay,
okay,
Got it.
if there's,
oh, Josh has got something up there.
So essentially, commissioners, you'll see an edited version of these two documents with the decisions that are what's on the docket for your approval. You can talk about that Tuesday morning and then vote on it Tuesday afternoon. And then after that, we'll schedule a briefing for prioritization.
okay. So with that, it is 12:25. There are no more questions or comments. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Don't you have to sign something?
I do,
And
but I gotta go to the bathroom first.
then.
And I will sign.